Hey y'all, welcome to Book Marketing Mania. I'm Kim, a book marketing strategist for Christian authors, and I'm so thrilled you're here to learn how to grow your author platform, market your book on podcast, and steward your message in a way that honors God and your time. So as we've been talking the past few weeks about auditing your marketing strategies and your time, I hope one strategy that's come up to your top priority is SEO and getting more traffic to your website so more of your target readers can join your email list and buy your books. And after spending so much time creating long-form content on your podcast and your blog post, let's maximize it. That way, in the long run, you'll actually be helping more readers find you online while marketing your book in less time. Yay! Who's here for that? To help us do that today, I've invited my new friend, Faith Hanan, to the show. Faith is a copywriter and content strategist and host of the Simple SEO and Marketing podcast for Christian entrepreneurs, which I personally have learned so much from about SEO. Faith was a guest teacher inside a podcasting mastermind I was in this spring, and I couldn't wait to interview her and ask her all about SEO and keywords. And when I announced to my email list that I was interviewing an SEO expert, lots of great questions came pouring in, and I'm so thankful for you. Now, I will say this interview is focused solely on SEO and keywords on your website. I know there are other topics around keywords for Amazon and also for Pinterest, but we're going to save those for another day. So if you've been asking yourself, how soon should I start working on SEO? Or if I can't rank on page 1 for my category, is it even worth my time? Or do I still need a blog if I'm spending all this time on podcast and my YouTube channel? And how long does it take to know if keywords are even working for me? If you have any of those questions today, you are in for a treat. So let's get to it. Hey, Faith, thank you so much for coming on as my guest on Book Marketing Mania to serve my listeners today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kim. I appreciate it so much. I love writers and authors. And so it's just like, speaks my little heart, makes me happy just to talk to y'all.
Oh, yay. I'm so glad. Well, and I kind of gave you the scoop on our listeners here at Book Marketing Mania, Faith, and also kind of gushed on you in the introduction so everyone knows that they're going to be sure and check out your show that I'm a huge fan of, Simple SEO and Marketing podcast. So I just wanted to kind of pick your brain, Faith, and just help our listeners that some of them have been blogging for a while. Some of them are just starting to think about how to put content out there so that people can find them and their books. And so can you just kind of simplify from the very beginning, what is SEO in really simple terms and why it's important to authors to help people find their books?
Okay, so SEO in its very simplest terms is just simply making your stuff, whether it is your podcast or YouTube video, your book on Amazon, or your website, which is what I specialize in, findable by search engines. Mm-hmm. It's just simply a variety of things that you can do to make your stuff get found easier. And it's a huge, big, dark hole that you can get lost in and intimidated by very easily if you let it. But I've been able to break down some really simple things that work for me and work for clients and work for listeners. And so that's been really fun. But it's just simply making stuff findable.
Oh, good. Yeah. And that's so important. And I know a lot of our listeners, they're hoping for traditional book contracts. And a big thing with traditional publishers is where is your audience of book buyers going to be and how are people going to discover your book? So I love that you're going to kind of dive into that. And I know too, like we had just talked about before we hit record, I know a lot of you have been blogging for a long time and you may be trying to figure out how to get more page views to increase your ad income, as something you're doing aside from your book writing, as well as, you might affiliate products, you may have, you're just maybe wanting to grow your email list. And so there's all these things that I want everybody just to kind of think about, like it's not always just your book, and your book plays a huge part in that, what we talk about on the show, but there may be other things I want you just to think, keep your eyes kind of open to what Faith's sharing today. So Faith, one of my listeners asked, I had sent out an email and just said, hey, we're going to have an expert come on and talk about SEO and keywords. So I got a lot of really great questions, but one of my listeners that writes about mental health, and she's a mental health professional, asked, like, if I can't rank on page 1 for mental health, which is a huge niche, right? Is SEO worth my time?
Absolutely. She just needs to she needs to find keywords that are attainable for her and her business size. Because, okay, so let's see, I'm just making stuff up.
Yeah,
Who's ranking on the top page for mental health? Well, probably like, Pfizer and giant counseling companies that you can book online. I mean, you're not competing with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your ideal person is somebody, I'm just, again, making this up for her.
Yeah.
Her ideal person is maybe the work at home mom who doesn't have somebody to talk to, but only has, $50 a month to put towards counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. And so she's not competing with the people who are looking to Pfizer. She's competing with the people who are looking for $50 a month to have somebody to talk to in my corner to process my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And so she just needs to kind of reframe her thinking in that, like, you're not going to catch the fish that 5 million people are going for. You're going to catch the fish, that 100,000 or 1,000 or 10,000 people are going for, depending on the size of her audience. And so she needs to look for keywords that are searched in those ranges. So if she has, and there's a formula to it that I've come up with, but let's say she has, a really great blog following and a really great email list and a really great podcast, that she's churning out content. She has people already going to her content, then she's going to be able to go for a little bit bigger keywords than the person who just started their blog yesterday and has 5 Instagram followers.
Mm-hmm.
And so she needs to think more in the terms of the problems that she solves rather than like mental health, the umbrella of the industry.
Uh-huh.
She needs to think more in terms of the problems that she solves, like what to do when I'm having an anxious morning or how to deal with anxiety with kids at home.
Mm-hmm.
What are 3 breathing exercises to do when I'm feeling depressed or whatever. And again, I'm making stuff up. I don't.
Yeah. And those are things like her people might be going on Google and actually typing in exactly those. Yeah.
Very tangible result type content. And, you write enough of those blogs in a keyword rich format, and pretty soon you're popping up on the top list, on the top page for multiple things within your industry or within your business. They have very high search intent, which means that, so the person Googling mental health, they might just be Googling they might be wanting to know what is mental health.
Mm-hmm.
They might be wanting to know what pills are available for mental health. They might be wanting to know what shows are about mental health. They aren't necessarily going to seek help and purchase something with that search term. It's a very low search intent search term versus somebody that's looking for 3 breathing exercises to do when I'm feeling anxious. They're going to look, they have a very strong intention of reading that and following through with that. So those are they're actually better terms for her to use anyway.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. For sure. Because that's what they're searching for. And I was thinking about, as you were just saying that, like, even for like the broader terms, like we have women in the audience that have wrote, like, say they have a book that's like Hope for Weary Moms. Well, what I guess like what you're saying is like, maybe they wouldn't be typing that in exactly, but they are typing in other terms that are similar to a weary, whatever they would say for weary, right? I'm just beat down. My kids are screaming in the background, whatever, they're looking for help for those solutions, but yet they're going to discover your product, your book or a course or anything like that. And same with like, I think about Bible journaling. I have a lot of people that do Bible journaling and verse mapping and, different devotionals. So it's like, instead of thinking those big, broad terms, you're really honing it down to your individual reader and the struggles they face. And it might be different things, but you would lead them through your content to your book, to discover your book, right?
Right. Well, and the cool thing with online marketing is nothing is mutually exclusive. It all plays together like a giant, a wagon wheel or a spider web. Like, your podcast works when you're doing it right. Your podcast works with your website, works with your blog, works with your social media and your Pinterest. It's all integrated. And so when you have really strong content pillars and a really strong SEO strategy overall, then it all works together beautifully instead of feeling like this isolated, I have this person here and this person here and this project here and this project here. Because I know, like, who has time to manage 5 different online lives? Like,
right. Oh, gosh.
It all works together.
Yeah, so true. Well, I'm glad you talked about, all those different things, blog and podcasting, because, for our listeners too, somebody had asked, do I still need a blog if I have a podcast or YouTube as my long form content?
Yes, because everything is findable different ways. So if you have a podcast and somebody goes into the podcast app and they search hangry mom or angry mom or tired mom, they're going to find podcasts on that. But if they go to Google and they're searching how to not hate my kids, then podcasts are probably not going to be the first thing that pops up. Now, podcasts do use SEO. Podcasts are findable, but ultimately you want your website to be playing in there as well. And if you have a podcast and you're not blogging, then you don't really have anything to get found on your website.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I know I've seen a lot of people that they put out some really great content on their podcast, but when you pull up the episode, there's nothing meaty in the description, and there's definitely not like a link to go out to a blog post to learn more. So, do you recommend that they, I've always heard before, like just taking a transcript of your episode and putting it into a blog post as your show notes, I guess too. But I've also heard like recently that's even changed more. Like it's like kind of like that's what we used to do, but then now it's that's just not going to work, right? We have to get a little bit more detail. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
A transcript, in my opinion, a transcript of your podcast is just poop. Like nobody reads a transcript. Like nobody, one person in all of my life have I ever heard them reading a transcript. And I'm like, God bless you. I have 2 small children, a business, dogs, horses. Like I ain't got time to read none of that. So, and transcripts cost money to get, right? And then you have to edit them and they're terrible looking and they just don't read well. I mean, you spend a lot of time making a transcript halfway decent to put on your blog. Whereas if you would plan your podcast really strategically, outline it, and then repurpose that outline into a blog, man, it's gonna kick butt and take names on the internet for you way better than a transcript ever would.
For the purposes of SEO, right? I was just thinking like, I know we're encouraged to do transcripts for like someone that couldn't listen to our podcast, right? They could at least read the words. Is that right, for accessibility?
So, I actually asked somebody this question that she used to work as a sign language interpreter. And so she's very, has a lot of connections to the hearing impaired. And I said, is this something that they would actually use? And she said, no. A blog that is well-written, that they can skim, because we all skim blogs and get the information, that's going to be way more useful to them than a transcript. Because the only thing that the transcript does for you SEO wise is it lets Google know that you are producing fresh content. Okay. Which in the scheme of SEO, if that's all you're doing, it's not really doing much for you.
Right.
And I teach how to take that podcast and turn it into a blog. And when I was doing that for myself, I could record. So I take about 45 minutes to record a podcast and get it out, like all the things, boom, done, bye. And then take my outline, turn it into a blog, create the images, optimize the images, do Pinterest graphics, name everything appropriately, upload it, optimize it on WordPress, and hit publish and done in an hour and a half.
Oh gosh, yeah. Everybody needs to hear that then, because everybody thinks it takes so long. So what I was just meaning, so you, so you've got your outline of your episode when you record an episode, and then you're taking that and creating the blog post from it versus transcribing your whole episode and then trying to work that into a blog post that would make sense. Is that what you mean? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Cause for me, and I know everybody's brains work differently, right? But for me to take something that's like super messy, like a transcript, and try to like rework it and move it around and make it sound good, I'm just like, forget that. I'd rather write it myself. And I'm naturally a writer. And so writing is easy for me, which is
okay. Well, that's how many of my listeners feel the same way. Well, I love you hearing how it doesn't take a ton of your time. And I know, how long have you been podcasting, Faith?
I launched my podcast in June of 22.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you're just like at 6 or 7 months into it. And I mean, I just love hearing that and I know it's grown like crazy. I was so happy to discover it. And, just that you have that good system down. So it's not taking a ton of your time, but yet it's being so fruitful and being able to blog and things. Okay. So good. So everybody has heard, obviously it's very important to have a blog, even if you're podcasting or YouTubing your long form content. Let's repurpose that over to a blog but do it strategically with everything that Faith shares today, as well as on her podcast, because it's so good. Okay. So I know another question that listeners sent in, Faith, is when should I start working on SEO? Like if I'm just starting to blog, like say I've never blogged before and I'm going to start a brand new blog, when should I start working on SEO?
Yesterday. So I started blogging when I started a blog when my daughter, who's 5, almost 6, was like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months old. She was born in May. I started it in August. And I was blogging about all of the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I blogged about all of the things, hunting and hiking and health and business and Jesus, and like, what in the even heck was I doing? Like, God bless me, and I had no idea what I was doing with keywords. I was just like, I'm a writer and I'm going to write. And bless me, I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and made no money and no traction and had nothing. Like, it was an expensive hobby is what it was. And I had to learn all of the things the hard way and finally I realized, basically, long story short, I had a client who they had a website on a different platform than what I had. And their platform was just way more SEO friendly. And mine was beautiful. Their website was ugly. Mine was beautiful. And they were getting so much more traffic than I was, like an extra 0 on the end, because their SEO was so much better. And it wasn't even that good for what I know now. And so
just the platform that they were on was really okay.
Yeah. And I mean, they had more stuff in place than I had at that point, but like what I have now and what I know now is like 10 times better than what they had, if that makes sense. And so if I had known what I know now, right, like my blog and my website would be so much further and I would have so many more page views versus like spending all that time just writing to write and blogging to blog without the SEO basics in place.
Yeah, just not pushing out a ton of content just for the sake of it, thinking that alone is going to build things. Yeah. So I don't think I had this on my list to ask you, but I'm going to ask you because I know you probably have seen a lot of different platforms. What is the platform you recommend to people? Like, say they're just starting a blog today or a website today. What platform do you recommend they go on?
Show It, 100%. I like Show It because you can play with a lot of the things and manipulate a lot of things on the back end to make it more SEO friendly. But it still is easy to work with. And it's not as easy as Squarespace, which is what I was on before. Like, there's more of a learning curve with Show It, but it's easy enough to work with that you can figure it out. It doesn't take, a designer to do it. And I'm just a little bit picky about how things look. And you can take a Show It website and make it so beautiful because you can put things wherever you want them, but you can still have the back end stuff to really optimize your SEO. And their blog, they have a deal with WordPress. So your blog is actually on WordPress and then your website is hosted on Show It. And so they have a beautiful little marriage. And so then you can take advantage of all the wonderful blogging things with WordPress. Now, if somebody's already on WordPress and you've already figured that world out, like stay there. That's fine. But if you're on Squarespace or Wix, like I would consider moving over to Show It.
Okay. That's great advice. I keep hearing about that, but I don't know much about it. But I know a lot of our people are going to either be on Squarespace or WordPress for sure. Lots of people and maybe some other programs that I don't know about, but most of them are on either Squarespace or WordPress, I believe. But I keep hearing about Show It. So I'm glad to get your expert opinion on that. And so I'm sure you would answer the exact same way. So, for the people that have been blogging for a long time and have years of content, but they haven't been focused on SEO, would you say yesterday is when they need to start focusing on SEO as well?
Well, I don't want them to get overwhelmed either.
Yeah.
I don't want them to get overwhelmed and just curl up in the fetal position and cry. Like, I get that. If you have, just a ton of content and you're like, Faith, I have 500 blogs. Where do I even start? Well,
yeah.
Call me. I'll help you sort through that if you need to. But really, like, to just seriously sit back and consider, am I still promoting the same paid things that I was 10 years ago? Right? Like, has my audience changed? Have my content pillars changed? Have, my offers changed? Because everything we produce should be pointing towards something, right? Like, we're not just writing to share our feelers. I mean, if you do, great, but that's between you and your mom who's going to read the book. Nobody else is reading it. So really, really evaluate, like, okay, what content do I have that is worth optimizing?
Okay. That's a good idea. Yeah. To think about, like, is it a paid product? Is it my email list? Is it my books? Is it, what is it that might have changed? Like, that's what I was thinking of. There's a lot of people that have been blogging for years, but some of the blog posts, like you said, how you started in the beginning, you might just be blogging about something totally random. And it's probably not worth your time to try to go optimize that if it doesn't even. It's
none of my
hunting
blogs or hiking blogs are optimized. I'm pretty sure they're all gone.
Oh gosh, I love that. Okay, so back to just super simple terms. So we talked about SEO. What about keywords? Like, how would you describe what keywords are in relation to SEO?
So keywords, if you just think of your keywords as the focus phrase that you want to get found for, they're just the term that you want somebody to remember this blog by, remember your website by, to get known for. And a keyword is simply just a searched term. And if you want to get real technical, a long tail keyword is more than one word it's a phrase. But most of the time, at least for me, I use the word keyword and long tail keyword interchangeably. I'll just use keywords. And so keywords are honestly probably my favorite part of SEO, because it's just fun to like blend the art and the science of, website copy and writing well with being found and implementing these terms in a way that helps you get found. Because sometimes the words that we say in our heads, or even the words that we say out of our mouths in conversations, are not the words that people type into their computer when they're searching on Google. And so we have to take the desires that people want and figure out what they're typing in and implement that into our website copy, and then several different places on the back end of our website.
So how or where, so we think about keywords that we want to be found for so that people can Google and find us. Where do those keywords go on your blog?
Oh, all different places.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not just one place. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be really strategic with it, because if you're like little baby blogger Faith was, I was like, ooh, keywords. And I was like, oh, I can put keywords in all of the places. And I literally went to Google and I found the words that were searched, I thought were searched the most. Turns out I didn't know what I was doing, and I was finding the words that had the most content created around them. So they were literally the most competitive words out there, like blogger. Like I was using the word blogger, thinking that was a keyword I was going to get found for. And then I put that word every place. I like named my photos that. I put a bunch of tags at the end, and I did what's called keyword stuffing. It was not helping me at all. And so now I really encourage people, you need a keyword focus for each blog. And you need that keyword focus phrase in your title. And then you need it in some of your H2 text. And then you need it in some of your photo names.
So the H2 text, like in our headings of our blog post, and then and the photo names. And I know that's something that we didn't put a lot of importance on before, but now, like before you load any kind of graphic from Canva or wherever to your blog post, you want to make sure it has that focus keyword in the title of it.
Yes. Yep. I rename all of my photos.
Can you go do that after the fact? Like after I guess you can. In the back end, you could go rename. Is it worth it?
It just depends on your bandwidth.
Okay.
You've got to think like everybody has a limited amount of time, and some people have a large team, and some people it's just you and yourself, doing all the work. So if you were really trying to be super strategic and you're like, okay, I have these 10 big hitter pieces of content that I just really want to get found for and I really want to optimize, then go back through and, optimize those photo names. Blogging is one of those things you have to be really strategic in how you grow it and how much you invest in it, because, it's like anything else on the internet. You can fall down a deep, dark black hole trying to optimize your blog and then never spend any time on promoting your blog, or never spend any time on Pinterest, or never spend any time on a podcast. And so it's all about, optimizing that whole spider web or wagon wheel of your online presence.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great tips. And I think just like what you said, just kind of thinking through like, where do you even start, and kind of prioritizing it based on what your offers are today, or, the book you're trying to drive people to, or the email list you're trying to drive people to, versus getting burdened by all the stuff that you might have that could be optimized on there. So speaking of keywords, how do we find the right keywords for our target readers, and how many do you work on at one time? Like, so we don't get overwhelmed or go down that black hole.
Ooh, I love your questions.
I know my listeners are so good about sending me stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Your listeners are my new besties. I'm going to be like asking them all their questions so I can answer them good. So how many keywords do you go for at a time? So I've created a system that a lot of people call them target keywords. I call them goal keywords, and I like people, and they're bigger keywords. And when I say bigger, I mean more searched.
Okay.
And so I like people to have 3 to 5 of those.
Okay.
And they all need to be around the same niche. Like little baby blogger Faith had no business going for hiking tips and business tips and essential oil tips and Bible study, like too broad, too broad. I mean, you like somebody like you could, and I don't know the keyword sizes here. I'm just making stuff up. You could go for book marketing, writing your first book, marketing your book, getting more book buyers, something like that. All within the same, the same niche as far as what you're getting known for. So 3 to 5 of those. Ubersuggest is by far my favorite SEO and keyword tool.
Okay.
There's a free plugin for Chrome.
Okay.
It's free. So you're not getting the whole thing, but Ubersuggest is, to my knowledge, the only really good platform that you can buy a lifetime license for.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And it's like $300, but you get a lifetime license for it. And everything else that I've used I like is like almost $200 a month. And so I always recommend people purchase Ubersuggest who are getting really serious about their SEO. And then Ubersuggest will actually analyze your website for you and say, fix these 5 things. These are the most important. These things need fixed, but they're not as important. So it's a really great tool for SEO. But again, it is paid.
Are there free tools? I think you have a podcast episode on this, right? That there's some free tools you could use. Okay.
I do. But ultimately, I mean, if you're going to get real serious about SEO, like you either need to, pay somebody to help you with your SEO or buy Ubersuggest and kind of bootstrap it yourself. It's to me, it's very much worth the money. Like if I had Ubersuggest 5 years ago, I would have been a lot further than I am right now.
Yeah, because then you could so tell us about how when you use that. I mean, I'm just thinking, so anytime then you could just pop in when you're creating some content and put in those keywords or keep track of the 3 to 5 you're really trying to focus on, right?
I just keep track of them on a list that I want to focus on. You can get Ubersuggest is also kind of a black hole. Like you can go analyze your competitors' keywords. You can go create all kinds of goals. And I mean, but really the main way that I use Ubersuggest is when I'm creating content and then when I do client work. When I create content, I come up with the idea first and then I make the keywords fit it. I can't work the other way around. My brain doesn't work like that. Like I don't just go do keyword research and be like, "Ooh, this is a good keyword," and then create content to fit that. Like I have to come up with the content authentically and then figure out the keywords to fit that content. And so what I'll do is within my blogging process, I will say, okay, I've got this podcast and I'm going to repurpose it for this blog. So I go and do 5 minutes of keyword research on Ubersuggest, find a good keyword that I know is within my range. And that's my focus key phrase for the blog.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds like a super simple process. So we talked about, finding your keywords, putting them on your blog posts. There are different places that you could put them on. And again, Faith has tons of episodes on all this to break it down for you. But one of our listeners wanted to ask, as far as like blogging and using the Yoast SEO plugin, if I just get the green light from Yoast, am I good to go for SEO?
Yes and no. I love Yoast. If all you're doing is making Yoast happy and you're like, this is all I can handle, then that's okay. The only issue with just letting Yoast be your SEO Bible is that Yoast doesn't consider the size of the keyword, and Yoast doesn't necessarily consider clickability of the title. Okay. Or, because there's just a lot of factors that go into a good title. Like you have to intrigue people, but you also have to please the SEO gnomes. And Yoast doesn't consider the intriguing factor, and they don't consider the size of the keyword. And then sometimes Yoast will yell at you if you have used that same focus key phrase before, because they think that you're going to cannibalize on your own content, which there is some validity to that, but also people are always going to be smarter than machines. Right? Like if you have a focus key phrase called marketing your book as a self-published author, if that's something that you're going to talk about again and again and again, you might end up reusing a focus key phrase 2 or 3 times. And that's just got to be okay. Right.
And it would just be okay. Yeah. So talk to us about that. Cause I know I've heard that term, but maybe others haven't and I know that was one of the questions. I don't think I have it on the list, but just to ask about duplicate content or cannibalizing your content. Will you talk a little bit about what that is?
So you don't want to ever duplicate your content, like just copy paste the same thing. That will dang sure get you knocked for SEO. But in terms of cannibalizing your content, I mean, you've got to think about the size of the keyword. Like we'll go back to that mental health example. Like, let's say that she's going to go for a keyword as huge as mental health or something, similarly large. She's probably going to have more than one post on mental health. And so maybe what she would do is she would write, a blog about mental health, and then something similar about evaluating mental health. And let's say she's just real tired that day and her keyword phrase for Yoast is just mental health. And she's like, I'm done. It's just mental health. And that's what it's going to be. Well, so maybe you're kind of cannibalizing it a little bit, but maybe also you're going to actually get found for 3 tips for better mental health, because that's the thing that you're actually using a lot in your content. So you just have to evaluate it. Like, Yoast is trying to help you keep your poop in a group. That's what they're trying to do. But in reality, you're not necessarily, your title's different. And Google doesn't know that that's your focus key phrase you typed into Yoast. Yoast is just trying to help you keep track of stuff, right? If you use your title different and you write a blog strategically, but you use the same phrase in more than one post, like Google doesn't actually know that you typed that into Yoast for your focus key phrase.
And so once we start applying some of this strategy for keywords and SEO, how do we know, like if I just started today, like how soon would I know if what I'm doing is right? Like if I focus on 3 to 5 keywords at a time, how soon would I know if it's quote unquote working, and how long does it take?
It just depends on how large your audience is to start with, how much content you already have out there, and how in-depth you get. I had one client, we did a coaching call, we got her keywords and put them on her page titles, and maybe she did some of her H1, H2 text, I don't remember, but her organic traffic doubled in a month, which is extraordinary. I was blown away. I was like, what? Are you sure? And I made her give me access to her Google Analytics so I could look, but sure enough, it had doubled in a month. Now, for the most part, that's kind of a phenomenon. I look for good results within 3 to 6 months. Because SEO is like the crock pot of organic marketing. Because, so full disclosure, yours truly has not written a blog since November because I have been head down working on other stuff. But my blogs that I wrote 5 months, 6 months ago, a year ago are still working for me. And my blog readers are going up every month. And so is that something I have to fix this month? Yes, it's on the list of things to integrate back into the workflow. But that long form content, it just keeps working for you.
Well, I know there's just so many other things I could ask you, Faith, but I really want to encourage everyone just to go check out your podcast. And again, it's Simple SEO and Marketing Podcast. And do you have anything you wanted to share before we go? And I definitely want you to let our listeners know where they can connect with you online.
My podcast is really the best place to hang out with me, Simple SEO and Marketing. And then I have a freebie that I would love to give you guys, if it's okay. It's just it's an SEO cheat sheet. And what it is it's simply an Excel document on Google that I made for myself and for clients to be like, this is what this word is. This is what it means in normal human language. Like, make it applicable for your brain, but I update it as I learn more, or as I break it down a little bit more simply. I keep that updated and I use it. And so that's a freebie that I love to give y'all.
Okay. Well, I'll be sure and put a link to all that in the show notes, because that's why I immediately wanted to reach out to Faith, just being a listener of your podcast. But then I had posted in a Facebook group asking for resources, and everybody pointed me to you. So I just can't thank you enough for your time today to share about SEO and keywords, and to, have it in really simple, easy to understand terms, because it's a big thing that is very overwhelming. So you've made it so much easier for our listeners. So I just thank you again for your time today, Faith.
Well, thank you so much. I love speaking to y'all, and I loved your questions. It was such a fun interview. And if y'all have any questions, please just email me, info@faithhanan.com. I love to help and take what I've learned and make your life and your business easier.
Oh, thank you so much, Faith. I appreciate it. Holy cow, y'all. SEO is a beast, and I'm so thankful to Faith for helping us chip away at just a little bit of it today. Be sure to grab her free SEO cheat sheet, and I'll put a link here in your player. And let me know if you'd like to hear more about SEO on the show, as I think it's an amazing way for your target readers to discover your content, especially your own podcast or podcast you've guested on, so they can hear you market your books. Thanks for tuning in. And as always, I'll be there for you next week to help you market your book one podcast at a time. See you then.